Hello to everyone and welcome to the first episode of the first season of HOBO, our new wandering podcast about cinema. With Ricardo, we'll take you around the world in the next few months, talking about films, chatting with directors and collecting pieces of art at the end of the world. So we are very happy to have as our first guest, Joaquin Cociña, which is the co-director of a short movie called Los Huesos, which won the 𝗁𝗁𝗓𝗄 Prize at Venice Film Festival in early September. He co-directed the movie with Cristóbal León, his friend and partner in crime over the years. So first of all, hi Joaquin, thank you for being with us. And how do you feel about the acknowledgement you received in Venice?
Thank you. Well, thank you for having us. At first, I want to say that Christian told his love, but he became a father really yesterday. So he said like, maybe I will be father soon to you, but yeah, it is a fact now. He's the proud father of a little girl. So
congratulations for.
But he will not be here for obvious reasons. He have like more.
It's fine. We are happy for him. So
yeah, me too. Yeah. Well, how I felt, it was just amazing. I mean, I think first, okay, I have to be honest about something. Maybe this will be not polite, but it's based on my lack of focus on success, I guess. I was not really conscious about the importance of Venice. I knew, of course, Venice. Also, I know like other important things that happens in Venice, like the Biennale of Visual Arts, and of course this. But because we were, before this, we were in another festival, we sort of have these festivals in the same sort of package, you know, like, and I still think that Rotterdam is amazing and Berlin is great, and, you know, like, but I didn't realize until we won, I have to say, that like how huge was to win this. Like, it's a little bit like the Oscar, you know, like in another, of course, like Oscars is the States, of course, that's another word. But so I was, of course, happy when we were accepted, but I was surprised then on how much, you know, like reactions we had about the short film. And I also have to say that with Cristóbal, we work with these like projects that we love, but we are pretty conscious that it can be really weird, or like it can fail in terms of connection with the audience or with the jury in this case. And we are honestly like surprised when we are accepted. So to win, it's actually just, yeah, a really nice surprise.
And so I will take 30 seconds just to introduce to our audience to this film we are talking about, so Los Huesos, which is a fictitious account of the world's first stop-motion animated film, dated 1901 and excavated in 2023, if I remember correctly. And the footage documents a ritual performed by a girl trying to bring two corpses back to life. And these two corpses are two figures of Chilean history, one from the 19th century and one from the 20th century, both defenders of the oligarchy. So we have this historical aspects and also the fictitious aspect of this work. So my first question is about that. Which came first, the story or the concept of doing a fake archival film?
Okay, we are really chaotic in our process, Cristóbal, I have to admit. Like when we tell the story of how we developed the project, it sounds more like a line, like a straight line, but normally it's like many ideas that start to collide. Yeah. I think, but in this case, I think the political feeling of the film became first because we were, you know, just before COVID in Chile in October 2019, we had this like this like protests, like huge protests in a way for the politicians and for like especially like really rich people come from nothing. They sort of like, they were like really amazed like where this comes from. Of course, when you start to read history and economics, you understand where it comes from. But so this was like October 2019, and it was really violent and really good and terrible at the same time. So we started to think with Cristóbal to do something in that aim. So to do something about that changing process, because it was really intense. Like from October to January, it was like, it felt like a year, you know, like I was actually, you know, like a little bit injured just because of a little bit. Okay, I was not really injured, but just because I was in the manifestation, just standing there, you know, like the police was really shooting to people, like not with real guns, but with these like metallic plastic things that were like, you know, like, so many people were like blind or half blind, like more than 200 people. So it was really intense, and the energy was basically pushing power back. And the main idea that starts to grow in the streets was to change the constitution, because the constitution that we had, or we have still, was written under Pinochet dictatorship, actually mainly by Jaime Guzman, one of the characters that appears in the film. And so we start to think, okay, what we can do in this context. And then COVID came, you know, like, and like sort of like, well, and that's a worldwide history. I don't have to repeat that.
Yeah.
But that energy from the movement, anyway, it found his path, and sorry. So now we are now there is like a public, not a public, popular, like now a group of like 155 persons chosen by people are actually rewriting the constitution, like right now. So we thought that we should make something about that. And for us, the more important thing about this political process is about actually changing our tradition, which is basically oligarchic. You know, like Chile have this like neoliberal thing, but based also in this like sort of medieval structure where like rich people own land and people worked in their land. So it was like big landowners. That changed, of course, but it's sort of the same families, you know, like that now have another kind of business. So that came first, I have to admit. Yeah, only in this case of this film. At the same time, or maybe after that political approach, we came with this idea that was more like based on the history of film, and also based in a technical approach, which was that we imagined that this was a film produced at the beginning of the 20th century. So because it was really in the beginning of the 20th century, we could like imagine that this was the first stop motion animation. We found that it was funny to imagine that Chile and South America was actually the place of birth of animation, which is really uncanny. But and also we took these Starevich films as a reference. So you know that Starevich starts doing like stop motion animation, and probably one of the first stop motion animator. And the first project that he made, or what he said, is that he was working in this like National History Museum, and he tried to shoot some bags, and the bags, because of the lights, were like dying or like hiding. So he used corpses, you know, or dead bags with like wires instead of the moving parts. Sorry. So we thought, okay, we can make that the same thing, but in a more like over the top, or like a little bit like exaggerated way. So we said, okay, we will use like body corpses, but like human body corpses. So yeah, that was the idea.
I have a question about Costanza, the girl who performed the ritual. Yeah. Is Costanza based on an historical figure? In a few frames, she also becomes human. Why did you choose to insert a live action sequence into the project?
Yeah. Okay. First, about Constanza Nordenflich, she is actually the mother of Diego Portales' kids. But Diego Portales was married at some point. His wife died, and at some point he started to date this 14 years old girl, if you can say date in that I mean, he was, I don't know how old, but he was definitely more than 30 years old. So he started to have sex or something like that with the little girl, and she became pregnant 3 times, and she was like locked down by the family, and the kids were taken out of her, and she spent all her life like sick, waiting for Portales to marry her. So and he was not doing that. At some point he almost did that, but in a terrible way. She was really sick and she was probably dying. So Diego Portales sent his friend with like a legal paper to marry her in the name of Portales, only if she was dying. And because she didn't die one night, he didn't marry her. Why we did that with the real actress is because one day I came with my little daughter and we realized that the size was more or less the same. So we said, okay, why not? So my little girl's in Internet Movie Database, and she's now 4, but she was 3 when she made her first film appearance. Yeah, it was more like a joke. I mean, I think it worked because it's really creepy when you are like doing like, because I think for 1 second or maybe half of a second, you are confused about what you are saying.
Although your movies are, in some way dark and deals with sensitive issues, it seems there is a degree of humor in them. And it looks like you always want to do funny things, but the results are always terrifying, like a joke that goes wrong. So I want to ask you, is there a desire on your part to combine comedy and horror in your work?
Being honest, I think sometimes we think with Cristóbal that we are like really bad comedians, like really bad, because we like, I think like 80% of or a huge part of our like decisions are jokes, and we laugh during the process. Like, what if we do this? Ha ha ha, it's so funny. And then like people don't find it funny. And of course I can see that looks creepy, but actually I'm not a fan of like, like horror movies, not at all. I mean, some, like, I really love some horror movies, but I don't go to watch, like like the 3rd horror movie of a house that is, with these girls, like with dark hair, long, with the dark eyes. I don't really like that. And it's like, so no, we normally start with jokes, and we really enjoy like having really bad ideas and taking those bad ideas like really over the top. We also realize that the more brutal symbols are used in our films, it looks more subtle for some strange reason. Maybe I'm really silly about this because I don't have like academic film background, but yeah, I just realized that like a character comes in and says like, I love you like myself, and it works for some stupid reason, like, and when you try to be like poetic or it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And also I have to add to that this horror tendency that we have with Chris, or like more like a mysterious thing, it's something that just came to us years ago, and at some point we realized that we have to confront that. So, okay, how we deal with this? It will not go away. Like every time that we paint or we do a drawing or we do an animation or we shoot even an actress or an actor, it looks weird and it looks like creepy. So in a way, the Wolf House was about that, like how we dominate, that how we take that and how we take that and made that horror feeling become something more important than just the feeling of horror. And I think in this case it's the same.
Wow. And about the music, of this movie, I think this was the first time you called a musician. And what was your approach in terms of music and sound effects also? How did Tim Fain end up in the production?
It is actually the first time that we called a musician to take all the film in his hands, like, so he was the musician and also the sound designer. He didn't want to sign as a sound designer because he's a musician and they have their own rules about this, How Team Fame ended up, actually, this is thanks to Adam Butterfield. Lucas Engel, who is the producer of the film from the beginning, he is friend with Adam Butterfield, which is a North American and a guy from New York. And he saw the film like in the middle of the production process, and he said, like, I love this, I want to contribute with some money, and I propose to pay for the musician. And I know this guy is a North American musician, he worked for, you know, like blah blah blah, like a really amazing group of films, and I think he will be amazing. At the beginning, we were like, yeah, that sounds amazing, but let's not get too excited about this gringo, you know, this word that we use in Latin America for North Americans, because we are really careful about not being like really like, oh my God, he's so famous, he's so. We really like to work with people that we are friends, you know, like we don't call the best guy, we call our friends our like, not because they are friends, but because we like to work with our team, you know, people that are in the same artistic moment than us. Like we have been working with the same art director since the beginning, and we don't want to change it, like honestly. And she's amazing, and she's becoming, of course, bigger too. But in the case of Team Fame, okay, we said, okay, let's try it. And we sent him like some words about what we were imagining about the music, and he sent like 24 hours or 12 hours after that, like a 30 seconds track over the film, and everyone thought it was like a, you know, like something found on the internet. And then I started to realize that the timing of the music was actually accurate. So I said to Lucas and Cristóbal, like, I think this guy just made this in like 12 hours, you know. So we have a meeting with Tim, and we came with this, we had this idea about how to develop the thing, or where to go with the sound. And we asked him first, like, where do you think that this can like evolve? And he said basically what we were thinking. So it was, okay, guy, you are in. I mean, that's it. And he was really happy to, I have to say, because my theory is that we give him a lot of freedom. So he was like, we thought, okay, this should be like Chopin, but from hell. Because in a way, like what the music that people in Chile were playing at the beginning of the 20th century was Chopin, because Chile had this like all the high culture in Chile at that time, at least, was like 100 years like late, you know, like, so they were playing Chopin while Chopin was dead like 100 years ago. So the music that the high class was playing in Chile at that time was Chopin or something like that. So we said to Tim, like, imagine that, you know, Chopin goes into this like weird twilight dimension, or like a weird, like, you know, it's record in a really weird way. And he started to develop this, and he was happy because he was like proposing something. And we said, okay, further, like go far away, you know, like even more noise, like. So he was happy to.
Yeah, it was
and
very, very
genius, man. He's a genius. He's a fucking genius.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing, really. And about the technical side, you know, staying on the technical side, you did a remarkable job recreating this so-called historical films in terms of lighting, editing, and so on. Can you talk to us about the technical aspects of this particular film? What was different from the previous works?
Oh my God! Well, first we shoot it in 60mm. We have some backup, you know, like a digital, like this, our lovely Canon that is, it's really like to realize what we were doing. But we were not pretty sure about what was going on inside of the camera. After doing this, I just can't believe that animators were able to work before digital, you know, like it's fucking crazy. Like they were like shooting, and we you know, we shoot like some, like I don't know, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks without knowing if it actually was working. It's fucking nuts. It's fucking nuts. But it's also like really beautiful because it's really like magic, you know, like you are hoping that it's working, but you are not pretty sure. And what comes from the chemicals is like you know, like, wow, wonderful. So that's the first thing. Because of the technique, we also made a big change on the camera direction, because in our previous films of animation, especially, we always use the camera as an animal or as a character. So we were like, you know, in the Wolf House or La Casa Lobo, we were like, you know, like using the camera as a character who was attracted, or, you know, like the opposite of attracted, repulsed. No, you can say, no? Yeah, repulsed by what, a sound or something that was, you know, smelling or watching. So we were using the camera in this like really like expressionist way. And in this case, it was impossible, because first, it was like people at that time were not using the camera like that, and they had good reason. They were not able to do that because there was no digital thing. So it was not digital. So we decided that the camera will be always, you know, like in front, like a theater, like Méliès. So you have this like stage, and you will work as a stage. Just in a few cases, we made some like subjective cameras, because actually they were doing that too. But they had this beautiful thing in the beginning of the 20th century that, like, when you have a detail, the detail was not in the same position than the previous shot. So the detail was like something from another, you know, like another world. So that's why we use this like black painted cardboard to, you know, to make this like this reframe of the image. So we were really trying to do it as in the beginning of the 20th century, and also the lighting. Basically, what we did, like we bought a lot of like regular lights that we put in the ceiling, like this ceiling. So we were like working over there. I will show you later. And we were like hanging a lot of lights, because at that time they were using these like lights from the ceiling. So trying to recreate that amount of light, it was ridiculous, the amount of light that we had. Luckily, we have LED, you know, like we have like not like lights that are not hot, because that will be a nightmare.
Yeah. And I would like to ask you about, you know, a comparison between this short movie and La Casa Lobo, La Casa del Lupo in Italiano. In your first feature film, you imagined being filmmakers inside the community of the Colonia Dignidad. You imagined that the movie was directed somehow by 𝗂𝗃 Schaeffer himself, the leader of this colony. And in Los Huesos, you also needed to make up a fake creative mind behind the film. So is there always an element of role playing in your works?
Yes, always. I mean, we found that some years ago. I think it was 2010 or 11. Cristóbal was doing a residency in Amsterdam, and I was still living here in Santiago, but I was also already like planning my trip to go there with my wife. I mean, she was actually going to study there. So I was basically following her. And Chris came on vacations, and the idea of vacations for Cristóbal is that we can work together. So that's that kind of guy, you know, like, so we said, okay, we want to do something, but he will be here for like 4 weeks. We cannot do an animation piece, like not a regular animation. So we did something really fast, like with like puppets of tape, but with wires, and really like it is a lovely, horrible film. And at that point, Cristóbal was really tired of himself, because he was locked down in this residency, the ateliers in Amsterdam. And like tutors came every week to sort of move his feet, you know, like why are you doing this? Why are you should not do that? Blah, blah. So he was really like going crazy about this, thinking about his work. So he came with the idea, let's do something, but imagine that we are not the director. So we came with this idea that we will create a fake author, and we will make a film following him. And what we did with that series of works, now we have done like 4 films under that, we imagined like that we were following a sect, a religious guy who thinks that it's like Jesus, but it's obviously like sexually traumatized and everything. So what we did is like we took our Catholic education, because we went to both to different like Catholic schools, and we took that, and again we took that Catholic education, and we just add some volume and noise. So we end up with this like a mix of Buddhism, Catholicism, you know, like travestism. So our main figure in that line of work, which is called the Third World series, it's a guy who basically it's like a the main character is how you said, like an hybrid of a woman and a male, so a penis, tits, and blah blah. So we started
hermaphrodite, yeah.
Hermaphrodite, thank you. Both sex and everything. So we found really funny to make like films. Imagine that we were like this really over exaggerated Catholic guy who is so ashamed of body that he basically shows bodies all the time and like homosexual sex and blah blah blah. So we started to do that, and we were really happy, you know, like we did this like film which is called El Templo, which is performed by a woman dressing as a hermaphrodite, and it was so machist that a couple of friends from there, not friends but artists, they thought there was a video made by a female feminist artist, and then she saw our names on it, and she said, "Oh, a couple of gays," and then she realized that actually I was married. So she said, like, "But you are married because of some political issues in your country, you know, like imagine, I don't know, that I was like forced to be married or something." But she couldn't believe that we were like hetero guys like doing that film. For us, it was a huge success because, and then we realized, okay, this have a lot of potential, you know, like we go into these like horrible places and we are allowed to be free under the skin of another person, because I'm answering really long, sorry, but basically it's I found really boring to do something that is like left-wing, liberal, blah blah, what I'm in a way I am, you know, but it is so boring. It's just so like, yeah, you go to a museum, you see a work which is of course against Nazism, and you think, yeah, well, of course I cannot agree more, and you go out of the museum or the theater and you are not changed in any aspect. But if you imagine that you are the Nazi and you are, you know, like you know, the really evil person, and you try to do something creative out of that, I think it's more beautiful in a, of course, a strange way.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes, definitely. And about La Casa Lobo, was the culmination of a long experimentation made in the field of stop motion. Do you think Los Huesos is still related to that movie, or is it something that is taking you to new territory?
Well, of course, when artists think that they're founding new things, normally it sounds silly because normally it looks pretty similar, I know. But for us, it's quite different. I mean, the Wolf House is like it's the culmination of a process, definitely. We don't want to do that anymore. Of course, some days we are like, oh, it would be lovely to paint, you know, like a full house. But then we will be, I mean, if you ask me now if I will do the Wolf House 2 or something like that, I prefer to put play again to the film that we already did in 5 years. I will not do that again. But in a way, the Los Huesos is a new... Los Huesos is more linked, I think, to our next project, which is called Los Angeles. By now, it's called like that, which is a feature film that we... So it's a film about the origins of different techniques, in a way. So it will be... I mean, I'm saying something that probably will change next week, but it's a film that I think it will mix like 5 different like aesthetic approaches. So it's a film that will be lost in different aesthetic approaches, that wants to talk or dialogue with like different key moments in the history of cinema. This sounds so pretentious, it's terrible, but so we are trying to reimagine, you know, traditions, because we found, I mean, when you think about like beginning of 19th century, you have Méliès, and you know this, I always forgot the name of the more documentary guys. Come on, the train arriving at the station.
The Lumière brothers.
You have like this magic-based tricks, effects, you know, like dreamy thing, and then you have this documentary thing, and then you have another filmmakers. And every time that someone was shooting something at that moment, they were like doing experiments. Like everyone was experimenting. When you take, I don't know, like the first Walt Disney, he was like a fucking lunatic doing experiments, you know, like creating things or taking or stealing things. But okay, that sort of stealing things that were created like two years before. Or like we were like, I don't know, like for example, we were like trying to find which was the first 3D, and we just found this, like, it's not a deep research, you have to just Google it. Like the first 3D was made in the year 74, I think, in Utah University, and it's so beautiful. So we are trying to dig as deeper as we can in the origins of different like techniques linked to animation, but also to special effects. So in a way, Los Huesos is linked to that like sort of a research, if you can use that word, about the origins of different like technical approaches in cinema.
All right, so I think we can end this lovely conversation with a quick tour of your of your studio.
Oh yeah, of course. So, well, my studio now is, I can show you something. Maybe this will be sad because you will see the real puppets, but this is okay. This is Jaime Guzman.
Oh yeah.
One thing that I didn't tell you. This is a copy of my head.
Oh, all right. So okay.
And 𝗂𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 is a copy of the head of Cristóbal.
Yeah, yeah.
And the right, I mean, the left, this is my hand and my arm. And yeah, well, this is also because he have like two left side. But so what we did is like we made a copy of my head, like Cristóbal heads, my left arm and leg, sorry, and Cristóbal right side, and the torso is from the producer. So that torso is from Lucas. So in a way, we found it funny that we were in body and soul in the film. And also we didn't have to pay to anyone to do that. So we are also like painting a lot of like big paintings. There are basically like different versions of the poster of our next film. So we found like really funny again to do the poster before the script. So it at the beginning was a film about Miguel Serrano, who is a esoterical Nazi from Chile. He died. It's a funny thing. We can talk that another day. So we are working in different versions of that. So we have another one that really went far away. So the thing is, like, we were painting this, working on this before the lockdown, and then the painting were like locked down in our previous studio for 1.5 years, and we took it here, and we start to like add, and then now it's like absurdly dense, you know. So this one, it's called Antarctica. This is just, I started this yesterday, which is not really good. We are also like trying some things like animation, but like, well, that doesn't really matter. So, and this other painting and other painting, and we were also doing some tests for a film. This is a corpse that we were trying for a North American production. They say no because it was really funny. You know that we did this in like 1 hour, and they said they cannot actually accept this design because if they accept this, they have to do it there, and that will cost them like $1,000 per day of a dead body designer. And it was okay anyway. Really?
Yeah, it was North America, you know, like crazy. And this is us. Like these are the first. So Cristóbal is here now. He can join.
Oh yeah.
So this is, well, we have more also like another areas of the studio, but it's now organized. Normally it's more chaotic, you know.
I can't even imagine how that can be more.
Oh yeah, these are the boxes for the bodies. So now you have like a body, and this will go to a museum in Santiago, and it's funny because, of course, the boxes for the bodies looks like how you said that in Italian, like the boxes for dead people.
Diciamo il cesto per le ok, da bara.
Yeah. So it's funny. Yeah, and also we have here some. You have the only puppets in the Wolf House. They're like there. So yeah, you have
amazing house. Amazing.
And look, we have here also this so sophisticated box. It's just amazing.
Oh well.
Yay! I mean, I cannot believe how how sophisticated this thing is, you know?
Wow. You know, the black one is even more elegant and than the golden one. So, you know.
Yeah, but okay, that's good. My kids were really disappointed. They thought it will be a gold. So I said to them that the gold was inside.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, next time the gold.
Why not?
Well, thank you very much, Joaquin, for your time, and we feel very privileged to have the opportunity to see some of your work in your studio. And so it's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
HOBO will return in November with another episode with 𝗪εξάνδρη 𝗶𝗏, Georgian director, and we will talk with him about his new film, What Do We See When We Look at the Sky? So we will all see in November, and we'll talk with 𝗂𝗶𝗁𝗂. Thank you very much, and see you in November. Goodbye.
See you. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.